You know what's fascinating? We talk about Marduk like he's just another name in the endless catalog of ancient gods. But here's the thing that'll blow your mind. Marduk wasn't always the supreme deity of Babylon. In fact, he started as a nobody, a complete nobody. And the story of how he clawed his way to the top, that's not just mythology, my friends. That's a blueprint for how power works, how narratives get rewritten, and how entire civilizations manufacture their reality. Let me ask you something. When you think about ancient gods, you probably imagine these eternal, unchanging figures sitting on their thrones since the beginning of time, right? Wrong. Dead wrong. Marduk's rise to power is actually one of the most sophisticated political maneuvers in human history, disguised as a creation myth. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. So here's what they don't tell you in school. Around 2000 BCE, Babylon was just another city-state in Mesopotamia. Nothing special. The religious landscape was dominated by older gods like Anu, the sky god, and Enlil, the lord of wind and storms. These were the big players. These were the gods who'd been running the show for millennia. Marduk? He was basically a local deity, a regional manager, if you will, not the CEO. But then something changed. Babylon started gaining political power. King Hammurabi, the law code guy, he turned Babylon into an empire around 1750 BCE. And here's where it gets interesting. As Babylon's political power grew, so did Marduk's divine status. Coincidence? I don't think so. The priests, the storytellers, the ancient spin doctors, they crafted something brilliant. They created the Enuma Elish, the Babylonian creation epic. And in this text, they basically rewrote cosmic history. They took the old creation stories and remixed them, putting Marduk at the center of everything. Now, let me paint you a picture of what happens in this epic. In the beginning, there's chaos, literally. Tiamat, this primordial goddess of the salt sea, she's angry. She's creating monsters. The older gods are terrified, paralyzed, completely useless. They're having their equivalent of a board meeting going, "What do we do? What do we do?" And then young Marduk steps up. He's like, "I'll handle this. But here's my price. Make me your king. Not just a king, the king, supreme ruler of all gods." The older deities, desperate and scared, they agree. They hand him the ultimate weapons, the winds, the storms, the net of the four directions. What happens next is epic. Marduk faces Tiamat in cosmic battle. She opens her mouth to swallow him, and he drives the winds into her, inflating her like a balloon. Then he shoots an arrow straight through her belly, splitting her in two. From her corpse, he creates the world. Her ribs become the vault of heaven, her tears become the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. From chaos and destruction, Marduk literally constructs reality. But here's what you need to understand. This isn't just a cool story. This is propaganda. Masterful, brilliant propaganda. The message is crystal clear. Marduk alone had the power to defeat chaos. Marduk alone could create order. Therefore, Babylon alone deserves to rule Mesopotamia. You see how that works? And there's another layer. After defeating Tiamat, Marduk creates humanity. But why? Not out of love or boredom. He creates humans to serve the gods, to do their work, to maintain their temples. In the Mesopotamian worldview, humans exist to labor for divine powers. We are essentially a workforce. Think about that. Think about what that says about how Babylonian society was structured, how the ruling class justified the exploitation of the working masses. Now, cross-reference this with what's happening in Egypt around the same time. The Egyptians have their own creation myths, their own supreme gods like Ra and Ammon. But here's the pattern. In every major civilization, the chief god of the capital city becomes the supreme cosmic deity. It's the same formula. Political power equals divine authority. The priests sanctify what the kings conquer. Now, let's jump forward a bit. By the time of Nebuchadnezzar II, around 600 BCE, Babylon is at its peak. The Hanging Gardens, the Ishtar Gate, the Tower of Babel. This is when Marduk worship reaches its absolute zenith. The New Year festival, the Akidu, becomes this massive 11-day event where the king ritually renews his mandate by grasping Marduk's hands. Without this ceremony, the king's authority is illegitimate. The god must approve every single year. But here's where it gets even more interesting. When the Persians conquered Babylon in 539 BCE, Cyrus the Great, he was smart. He didn't destroy Marduk's cult. Instead, he claimed that Marduk himself had chosen Cyrus to liberate Babylon from a corrupt ruler. See the pattern? New ruler, same god, rewritten story. The narrative adapts to whoever holds power. Now, I want you to research something for yourself. Look up the parallels between Marduk's battle with Tiamat and other ancient combat myths. The Greek Zeus fighting Typhon, the Hebrew god subduing Leviathan in the Psalms, the Indo-European storm god defeating the chaos serpent. These stories echo across cultures, across millennia. Why? What's the archetypal pattern here? Some scholars argue it represents the triumph of order over chaos, civilization over wilderness, the rational mind over primal fear. But I'll tell you what I think. I think these myths encode something deeper, something about how human consciousness itself evolved, the ability to impose structure on chaos, to create meaning from randomness. That's not just mythology. That's the foundation of science, of mathematics, of every system we've built. And here's the kicker. Marduk's story isn't dead. It's alive in every narrative where a young hero defeats an ancient evil and establishes a new order. It's in your movies, your books, your political rhetoric. The template persists because it works. It resonates with something fundamental in how we understand transformation and power. But let me challenge you with this. If Marduk was constructed to legitimize Babylonian political power, what gods are being constructed today? What narratives are being written and rewritten to justify current power structures? What modern myths are you accepting without question? See, the Babylonians weren't stupid. They were sophisticated. They understood that whoever controls the story controls reality. They knew that if you can make your political supremacy into cosmic law, into divine mandate, then questioning your authority becomes questioning the very order of the universe. That's genius. That's terrifying. And that's still happening. So when you hear about Marduk, don't just file him away as another ancient god. Recognize him for what he really is, evidence of humanity's endless capacity to reshape reality through narrative. The clay tablets that preserved his story weren't just religious texts. They were the hard drives of Babylonian civilization, encoding not just what they believed, but what they wanted everyone else to believe. Go look at the actual tablets. The Enuma Elish survives on 7 clay tablets found in the ruins of Ashurbanipal's library in Nineveh. Touch that history. Feel how physical it is. These aren't abstract legends. These are concrete objects that real people created to control how other real people understood their world. And maybe, just maybe, start asking what tablets we're writing today. What stories are we telling ourselves to make sense of chaos? What new gods are we creating without even realizing it? Because I promise you, the game hasn't changed. Only the names have. That's Marduk. Not just a god, a mirror. And if you look close enough, you might not like what you see reflected back.